I remember it like it was yesterday. I had just finished facilitating the third day of a 5-day youth gathering, and I was packing up my belongings when this young woman came back into the room, and with a quivery voice and eyes brimming with tears, she said, "Can I talk to you?" And so I pulled out a couple of chairs and we sat down, and I began to be witness to one of the most incredible stories of resilience I'd ever been witness to. And it made me begin to wonder, what was it that allowed this young woman, who what went through my mind was, how are you even alive? What was it that allowed her to be resilient? Now, this wasn't the first time I had heard similar stories like this, but it was a catalyst. And I began to ask that question of people whenever I had the privilege to be witness to their stories. And it created this thinking for me that one person has the power to influence us profoundly. So let me put resilience into a cultural context for you. Because as I sat and was witness to these incredible stories, 4 themes began to emerge. And when I looked at them from a cultural context, when we think about resilience, it's like this photograph of this dream catcher made out of red willow. Now, some of you will know that red willow can bend, and rarely does it snap, which is just like us as human beings. If this young man unwound this dream catcher, that red willow would bounce back almost to its original shape, but changed forever, which is like us when we experience trauma. We can bounce back, but we are changed forever. And when we look at our history as Indigenous people in this country, we know that it is riddled with trauma and profound resilience. The top of this umbrella shows some of the pieces in our history that have and continue to impact the wellness of our children and families. Those raindrops or those teardrops are some of the ways this history continues to show itself. And then on the bottom, that handle, are those four themes that emerged that hold all of this up. These 4 blankets of resilience, that I called it. Because as I listened to people's stories and they talked about what it was that provided the courage for them to be resilient, it was like they were talking about being blanketed so that they could be warmer, so that they could have the courage. It's just like if you think about it, you get home Friday night and you're chilled after a long week. If you wrap yourself in a blanket, you feel a little less vulnerable. The first blanket that is relevant in emerging the resilience of children and youth is a strong sense of self. And you see with this little girl here up in the corner, she's sitting with the drum, with the drumstick, fostering her sense of identity, who she is, what nation is she from, who's her family. If she's part of a clan, she will learn that, part of a house. What's her language or languages? But to keep in mind that somebody has taken the time to sit with her, to show her how to drum, to show her that in this photograph you'll see that drum is not placed on the floor, there's something below it to protect the drum. Somebody has taken the time to teach her. The second blanket that people described for me was this blanket of a sense of family. So when I speak of family, it can be our biological family, but it can also be our family of choice. Those people who we love and who love us. One of the things that I almost every single time when I'd ask the question about what was it that provided you the strength to get through these times, almost every single person talked about either being raised up by or being significantly influenced by their grandparents. And it reminds me of our old ways of raising up children, that it was the grandparents and their brothers and sisters who were responsible for watching children, watching for the gifts that they had been blessed with, and then finding ways to groom them so that they can use those gifts to be of service. The third blanket that people described was this sense of community and how powerful it is to feel like I belong somewhere, that I'm bigger, a part of something bigger than just myself. And when people described that it was part of the community that helped to raise them up and lift them up during those dark times, The fourth blanket that really weaves all of them together is a sense of culture, language, connection to the land, to the water, and to the stars. We know today that culture and language is part of social and emotional learning, and that part of social and emotional learning is foundation for academic success. It gives us evidence, if we need evidence, as to why culture and language must be part of the foundation of education for Aboriginal students. When we look at all four of these blankets, all of them are connected to relationships in some capacity. And I continue to call these relationships a connection to a cookie person. That one person, that when we're in their presence, we feel bigger and better about who we are in the world. Now, this doesn't always mean that this person likes our behaviors, but they believe in us. Perhaps they even believe in us so much to call us on our behaviors. You are likely a cookie person to 1, 10, maybe 100 students, or perhaps maybe thousands over the years, that your sphere of influence is more profound than perhaps you imagine. This is a photograph of myself when I turned 11. Not long after this photo was taken, I started to drink alcohol. We moved a lot as a kid, and so I'd come to this new school, and these new friends had invited me to come home for lunch. And I was tired of eating my fried bologna sandwiches with mustard all by myself. And so I went home for lunch with them. And in the corner was a bottle of vodka and orange juice and Sprite. And my new friend mixed this concoction for me to drink. And I said, in my 11-year-old being, this tastes like a Shirley Temple. So I downed it. And the power that I felt as a result of that began me on a journey of 11 years of alcoholism, until I sobered up when I was 22. In my life, I have been blessed to have cookie people. People who have surrounded me, taken care of me, and one of them is my auntie. She was a psychiatric nurse, and I can remember sitting at her kitchen table many times, eating these amazing cinnamon buns she would cook. And she would tell stories about the people she was serving, and I'd be enraptured. So when it came time for me, when I finished high school and had upgraded to go on to post-secondary, what career do you think I chose? Psychiatric nursing, just like my cookie person. A few years later, though, I had wanted more, so I applied to the School of Social Work. And part of what you have to do is, in that application, is write something called a personal statement. And in my interview, I'd gone down to the University of Victoria, and just as I had finished my interview and I was about to leave, I had my hand on the door, and I was opening the door, and one of the women said, "I look forward to reading your book one day." And I continued to open the door because I certainly didn't think she was talking to me. She said, "No, wait, Monique. It's obvious by your personal statement that you're a gifted writer, and I look forward to reading your book one day." Now, I was only 6 months sober, so this concept of me writing a book was so far out of who I thought I could be in the world. But the seed got planted, because she was a cookie person in that moment. Because you see, cookie people, they can be people who come into our lives for a moment. They can be people who journey with us for a period of time, or they can be people like my Auntie Ellen, who's journeyed with me all my life. About 20 years later, I wrote my first book, a self-published book, and this photograph is the evening that book was launched. About 6 months later, that book was picked up by a press called Sonarness Press. And we rewrote it. I put in new characters, new chapters, a significant rewrite, and it's now called Tilly, A Story of Hope and Resilience. We launched it in Toronto in September of 2013. And only a few months ago, it was 3 days short of a year since we launched Tilly, that I found myself on the stage in Winnipeg, standing beside Chief Bev Sellers, who wrote a beautiful book, They Called Me Number One, and beside Thomas King, who's written many books, but the reason he was there was for An Inconvenient Indian. The The three of us were the finalists for a national award called the Burt Award for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit literature. They announced Chief bestsellers for third place, and there I stood beside Thomas King, who's like 6'4", and I'm like 5'1" on a good day. And I'm thinking, yes, Tilly got second, because I'm standing beside Thomas King, who's one of our most prolific Canadian writers in our history. And then they announced him for second place. And when I kind of computed what that meant, my first thought was, don't pee your pants. Because I was in such shock. And then my second thought was of immense gratitude to that person and that woman in the interview who had laid the first seed down that said, I look forward to reading your book one day. Those simple words were medicine. And we all have that ability with our tongues to either lay down medicine and to heal, or sometimes to harm. We have a choice in our words, and I'm so grateful that day that she laid down medicine for me, because it gave me the courage to do what I never thought I could do. This fourth blanket is our culture and language. When I went to treatment, I received my traditional name there. My name is Monique. When translated from Cree, it means little drum. That name goes back 9 generations on my dad's side and 7 generations on my mom's. And when I received that name and the medicine man told me that, I felt like roots went deep into the earth. That before that, I was just being blown around like sagebrush. But when those roots went deep, I knew, and I still know today, that when life deals me hard times, which it does, and I get blown over, that I can get back up because of my connection to culture and relearning my language. When we look at culture and languages, it reminds us that all of us have them. I'm speaking to you from a First Nations perspective, but every single one of us in here has a lineage of a culture or cultures and languages that can support us in being resilient. When I do my work, I'm always mindful that our children are watching. My children say things to me all the time. I have 11-year-old twins that remind me that they're watching. So my question to you is, what do you want them to see? What do you want them to see? Because you are the power of one. When we look at those 4 blankets of resilience, that our students, our children, our young people have a strong sense of self and who they are, that they know their identity, that second blanket, that they have a strong connection to family. And for some of those students, you are part of their family. That third blanket that wraps around them, their connection to community. Being a parent, I see the incredible value of the school community as one of the communities where my children live, learn, and have a high vibration for change and for showing up as to who they are. So the school community you create is incredibly important. And then this fourth blanket around culture, language, connection to the land, to the water, to the stars, reminds us that education isn't about sitting in a desk, that it is about reconnecting to our heartbeat, to the land, to the water, to learning so much more than we could have ever imagined we could know, on all different levels. When I received my name, Monique, the medicine man also said to me, your work, your life's purpose, is to remind people of their heartbeat. Because if we think about when babies are in utero, what's the first sound they hear? Pa-boom, 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 right? They hear their mother's heartbeat, which sounds just like a drum beat. Pa-boom, pa-boom, pa-boom. So each of you, because of your relationships that you generate, have this incredible sphere of influence to create positive, healthy change that will foster the resilience of the children you have the privilege to serve. And that you also are part of the family that helps to raise them up. You are like those grandparents and those elders who are witness to what are the gifts that these children have been blessed with, and how do I help groom them? Because you are the power of one. Matakiwas, all my relations, thank you.